This is the 2014 Porsche Panamera Turbo, and I recently did a review of the Porsche Panamera 4S. That's the new V6 turbocharged engine that replaces the V8, and you can watch that review. Goes into more detail about the design of the car. I'm not going to focus a lot on that today because we want to focus on what's new for 2014, and it's mostly in the back. They have an executive edition. This is the executive edition with 15 centimeters added to the rear legroom. So this is really what the name describes. It's for an executive, someone that's going to be chauffeur driven. Why would they come up with this now? Well, because of the Chinese market. A large number of executives in China, people that own factories and businesses, are chauffeur driven. They don't drive themselves, and that's why this car is really here. It's for the Chinese market. They brought it here to North America and around the world to let other people enjoy it if they want. Now, I'm going to go through the price because I'm choking on the price. I have the sheet here, what this car costs, the one I have here. $184,000 to get the executive version we have here. But they're not done with that. They couldn't throw everything in as standard equipment. No, they're going to charge more because it's Porsche, of course. $1,600 for the turbo wheels. That's spendy. $3,000 for the adaptive cruise control. I wouldn't get that. $970 for lane assist. Wouldn't get that. $730 for lane departure warning, wouldn't get that. $2,400 for the LED headlights. Now, I kind of would go for that because they look really slick on this car, especially when you park it, they all illuminate. Looks tasty at night, and people look at it and go, wow, that's some kind of car. Then you get $1,700 for the reversing camera. I'd get that out of necessity, but why isn't it included? $2,900 for the Sport Chrono package, same thing, why don't throw that in? $310 for the Power Steering Plus. It's the adaptive steering. Why isn't that included? $5,700 for the Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control. Now, I would get that with this car, but that just jacks the price up. And there's a couple other little tidbits in here. So this car sits basically at $205,000. That's an enormous sum of money. $204,965 before tax, before freight. So you better be rich to own this car. Now, one thing you do get with the Turbo is the beautiful full leather interior. All the side surfaces, everything that isn't, a harder material like plastic is covered in leather. One exception being the headliner, which is Alcantara, which looks very nice as well. So a sumptuous looking interior, and if you watch my previous review of the Panamera 4S, I go on record saying the best real luxury interior you can think of in a modern car. So that's all good. Now, the thing about the Panamera is I'm 6 feet tall, and I've still got room here. This car was designed to have an adult 6'4" sit back here. Now that's the regular car, which already has a good amount of legroom, but they've added 15 centimeters of additional legroom to this car, and it does feel fantastic. In addition, you get the ability to move the passenger front seat forward to give you a more limo-like ride. So really it's for an executive to sit back here with lots of room, enough room for a guest. The privacy blinds that go up on the side and then the back as well. But when you think of a limo or chauffeur-driven car, a Panamera doesn't typically jump to mind. You think of maybe a big S-Class or Mercedes, obviously domestic cars, maybe a Jag or a Bentley, a Rolls-Royce, something like that, but not a Panamera. I would see how this would be helpful in countries like Brazil, trying to get away from bad guys, get an armor-plated version of this, scoot away from them in a hurry, countries like that, maybe South Africa. But you know what? Maybe not my first choice for a limo, but it's certainly capable of getting somewhere in a hurry. Now, this Panamera does sport better than a lot of sports cars, but it doesn't do luxury as well as some other luxury cars. Now, the Turbo Executive does come with the automatic air suspension, which does really soften out the back especially, which is what you want really if you're going to have an executive in the back there and chauffeuring them. But the rest of the car is really quite edgy. The steering is aggressive. It does this sliding around at low speeds, doing tight corners because of the aggressive camber with the front end and that all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive system kind of binding up. I mentioned that in my other review of the Panamera 4S. I'd encourage you to watch that again. So this car is more about performance and being dynamic than being luxurious. The thing is, this car is really about the driver, not about the passenger, because with the Turbo, You get the 4.8 liter V8 and it has 520 horsepower. That's a lot of get up and go. And coming from the new 6-cylinder turbo they have in the Panamera 4S, this really is a beautiful engine. My favorite of the bunch though is the old 4.8 liter V8 that was in the old Panamera S and 4S and has been hopped up for the GTS. That is the nice motor. It doesn't have any turbo lag. It sounds fantastic. It matches the platform perfectly. Some might find that new 3-liter turbo a little bit underpowered. This one has gobs of power, does have some turbo lag, and the executive edition is kind of leaving me cold. Now, I don't want to be driven around in a Porsche. I want to drive it, so I wouldn't even be interested in this car. The car I really like in the Porsche lineup is actually the base V6. The Panamera 4 is a nice car, very nice car, because it's a bit lighter. And then in the high performance arena, I would go for the GTS. That's the naturally aspirated V8, the 4.8 liter with 440 horsepower. That's a lot of punch, and it gets a lot of the turbo bits onto the GTS, and it really is a fabulous car. The turbo is really only a 0.2 of a second faster to 100 kilometers an hour. Surprisingly, this car is only 1/10 of a second slower to 100 kilometers an hour versus the short wheelbase version. It is a beautiful car. It's a bit awkward looking with the long wheelbase, and it is really, really expensive.